Demand for travel is stronger than ever. After several years of not being able to travel because of the pandemic, World Travel and Tourism Council President and CEO Julia Simpson said she believes travel and tourism will return to its full strength this year. Now, I got to speak to Julia via Zoom, and she told me what it's like heading the WTTC at such a challenging time in history. She also gave a picture of the state of world travel and tourism.
Quite right. I mean, we all went through a terrible time. Our industry was decimated. We lost half our value. We lost 62 million jobs, which were people who, could not put a meal on the table for their family. So these were really serious times. I'm pleased to say that we've pulled out of that now. And with our neighbours China reopening at the end of last year, I think we will be seeing travel and tourism getting back to its full strength definitely this year.
It must have been quite a challenge for you to take the reins at quite a challenging time. But like you said, here we are, and we are sort of finding ways to sort of move forward.
Yes, we most certainly are. And the great thing is travel and tourism is an industry that people don't understand always how important it is to our global economy and to the economy of Philippines. So I always say of every $10 that are made on this planet, one comes from travel and tourism. And of every 10 jobs, one comes from travel and tourism. And in the Philippines, of course, it represents, in 2019, about 22% of the economy. Right. And at a global level, it represents 10%. So we're a really, really important business. We have responsibilities around sustainability. We have responsibilities to ensure we act as guardians for the beautiful nature that many of our visitors enjoy when they visit, say, the Philippines or where Boracay or wherever it may be around the world. Right. But oddly enough, we're best placed because we are actually on the front line to actually protect some of the beautiful nature and biodiversity around us.
In a recent speech, Julia, you said, I quote, demand for travel is stronger than ever. I'm beginning to feel that. It really is true. I'm looking forward to my first family trip after, a couple of years cooped up indoors. How would you describe the situation now? I think everybody is chomping at the bit and ready to experience a new level of travel and leisure.
Yes, well, all the numbers, I couldn't agree with you more. And I completely understand when you say you can't wait to get away with your family because we were all locked up for so long. And it's basic human instinct, isn't it, to want to travel and want to explore and meet new people and meet new cultures. So I really understand that. Interestingly, the WTTC's research is proving that because even though there are inflationary pressures globally, so we do have some headwinds, we are seeing that where people have what we call discretionary spend, they are choosing to spend it on family holidays. Also, people are doing much more of this thing called bleisure, where we're going on a business trip and then we're combining those adding a few days to have a holiday to make it sort of super efficient.
Tourism is such an important factor in the world economy. There are jobs that depend on people traveling. There are sites in the world that depend on the money brought in from tourism for the upkeep of many of these heritage sites and historical places, beautiful places in nature that need regular visitors in order for them to thrive and really have the upkeep that is needed.
Well, you've actually hit the nail on the head because visitor spend and visitors' interest and visitors' passion about places often helps protect them. And sadly, we saw during the pandemic where so many places were closed, you actually saw some great historical areas, some species that are normally being protected from, say, poachers. We went backwards. So actually, travel and tourism brings a great benefit. And I think tourists today want to really travel responsibly and sustainably. And part of that is not just about their carbon footprint, but it's about how they interact with the local culture. I was in a hotel recently, actually in Spain, and when I went to breakfast, instead of an enormous spread that went on for miles, there were a few local delicacies. They were foods that local people would eat, sourced from local suppliers. And actually, every guest at that hotel was so happy with that because the food tasted great. And they also knew that, in fact, it had been locally sourced. And that's the experience that you want. So more and more big hoteliers are understanding this. And I have to say, you know, we've had some great leadership in the Philippines because the WTTC, we held a big conference in Manila last year. And Manila really was, the Philippines were the first place in Asia to open up to travel and tourism because of our conference. And I'm pleased to say that even up to now, you have an amazing Minister, Cristina Garcia Frasco, and she's ensured that you've got 100 million international visitors to the Philippines only just this far this year. So, you know, you're doing really, really well. And I remember working with Bernadette as well, Romello, and, you know, great leadership, real passion for the value of travel and tourism.
Yeah, I think it's great that so many people who move the tourism industry are women.
Yeah, no, do you know, it's really great to see so many strong women at the top of travel and tourism, but not just at the top. There are two other aspects. The majority of bookings that are made for family holidays, believe it or not, are done by the women in the household. So actually,
you're preaching to the choir. I know exactly how that works, Julia.
Exactly. And those decision makers that are women, so they are the main consumers. So we need organizations that understand and appreciate that.
What are some of the big trends that you're seeing nowadays, aside from the fact that people are a little more conscious about their carbon footprint and are looking for more sustainable ways to enjoy travel?
Yes, well, we just published a very big trends report, actually. With Trip.com and with Deloitte, and we partner with people. We're a non-for-profit organization, but we partner with some of our members and they help us sort of pull together some really interesting statistics. And in the trends report, what we noticed is straight after the pandemic, people really, really craved the great outdoors. I think probably people were a little bit frightened about being in crowds, if I'm perfectly honest, but also they've been detached from nature and breathing wonderful fresh air. And you understand that. But what the trends report is showing is people are coming back to cities, great cultural centres, great centres of entertainment, of history, of, you know, meeting people and shopping. You know, us girls like a bit of shopping sometimes. So people are coming back to cities, and they're also coming back to beaches, the traditional beach holiday. So that was one of the trends. The other trends is social media. A lot of the younger generation, I don't need to tell you, being one of them, but they're making those decisions through social media. And also top of the list was that sustainability point. It's a funny word, sustainability. I think it can sometimes make some people think it's sort of a bit of a scientific thing or not to do with them, but it's really about how all of us lead our lives more responsibly in every aspect. And certainly, you know, we are campaigning now very strongly that aviation should have access from the big energy companies for sustainable aviation fuel, because it is a great opportunity, but the big energy companies do need to ensure that some of the production they're making goes towards SAF, and that will help us as consumers as well. So these are important things that we're trying to put the spotlight on.
So let's talk about you and your journey to becoming, you know, who you are now, where you are now. Prior to helming the WTTC, I understand that you spent around 14 years in the aviation sector. So you do know what you're talking about when you talk about sustainable air travel. So I believe that really does give you a good grounding that prepared you for this job at hand. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, absolutely. You know, I had the great honor to work with some of the big airline brands globally, Iberia, the Spanish airline, British Airways, Aer Lingus. And, you know, what I learned from those airlines is, first of all, how they really, really passionately believe in sustainable travel. This is not a bit of greenwashing. For many, many years at British Airways, I think since the 1970s, they were publishing environmental reports. So they're very aware and have a lot of integrity around this issue. The problem is nobody has invented yet an airline fuel that can replace the fuel that is currently used in engines, which is obviously based from carbon. So we're all on the big race to see how could we replace that. There's a lot of talk of electric planes, and I think for small planes and drones and something that might be able to cover a handful of passengers, we will get to electric planes. There's a lot of talk about hydrogen, and hydrogen, I think, does have an opportunity for the future. But if you're looking at something that can help us now, and you have to remember, if we're talking about CO2, we need to act quickly if we're going to meet the terms of the Paris Agreement.
Yeah.
We don't have 50 years, we have a handful of years. And one of the very, very best ways is something called sustainable aviation fuel. And people call it SAF for short. And sustainable aviation fuel uses biomass, basically rubbish that we don't need. So it can literally be the trash out of your garbage tin, and it actually puts it through a process and it creates sustainable aviation fuels.
Now, finally, since it is Women's Month, Julia, what for you makes an empowered woman?
Well, I think the most important thing is that we do act collaboratively, men and women together. We are all the same race, and I've had the great honor and privilege to be guided by very many men and very many women in our career. But one thing I will say for women is you have to really, really dream big, and you don't have to think that there are any brakes preventing you. There's this thing called unconscious bias, and unconscious bias can come from men looking at women and thinking that they can't achieve what they can achieve. But sometimes it comes from us ourselves. We do not believe that we can do these things. And it is hard combining family life. I've got two wonderful daughters. I'm only saying that because I'm talking to you publicly, of course. And, I've got two daughters. And it was hard when I was having a career and I had two children. So I think another thing is to have as stable and as loving a home life as you possibly can, because then you can share all those challenges of when you're trying to pay the bills, go to work and change nappies all at the same time. So, but yes, for every young woman out there, and young women are very, very privileged in a way, because they do get equal access to education in many parts of the world now, but there are still many women who are suffering, who are the victims of sexual exploitation and trafficking. And we have to remember that as us women, as pioneers, we have to give a hand up to the other women who are less fortunate than ourselves.
Thank you for sharing that with us. That was World Travel and Tourism Council CEO and President Julia Simpson. Thank you so much, Julia.
Thank you.